The private dining room at El Bernardine overlooked Central Park, floor-to-ceiling windows, chandeliers like constellations, and the kind of luxury that made silence hum. My family sat around the long table like visiting royalty, which, in their minds, we absolutely were. "Sarah, darling, try the lobster," my mother cooed, swirling a glass of wine that probably cost more than most people's rent. "It's divine." I poked at my salad, watching my brother Julian command the room from the head of the table. He was in his element, confident, animated, spinning grand tales about his latest business venture. Something to do with cryptocurrency and NFTs, though from the way he spoke, I doubted he actually understood either. "The initial investment is only $2.3 million, Julian declared, grinning. "Projected returns of 400% within 18 months. Uncle Richard let out a low whistle. "That's ambitious." "That's Julian," my father said proudly. "Always thinking big. Takes after me." Julian was 35. He'd been thinking big since college, ever since Dad handed him $500,000 to start his first company. It collapsed within a year. Then came the restaurant chain, gone. The tech startup, gone. The real estate development scheme, gone. Millions vanished, each loss blamed on someone else. The market, bad timing, incompetent partners. Never Julian himself. And each time he'd brush off the ashes and start again, always with my money. "Sarah," Dad said, turning to me, "we need to discuss Julian's opportunity. Here it comes. He needs $2.3 million by Friday. I know you have it in your investment account. It's just sitting there, earning what, 4%? This could quadruple in value." I was 29. I'd been funding Julian's opportunities since I was 22, fresh out of MIT with a computer science degree and my first real job. Back then, it had been just $50,000, a small favor for family. Because Dad said Julian was destined to be the next Steve Jobs. Because Mom had cried and said I was breaking her heart by not believing in him. That $50,000 became $100,000, then $300,000, then 7 figures. Over 7 years, I'd loaned my brother $8.4 million. He'd paid back exactly 0. "Sarah," Dad prompted, "are you listening?" "I'm listening," I said evenly. "You want $2.3 million by Friday." "Not want," Dad corrected. "Need. This is time sensitive. The investment window closes." "They always do," I murmured. "What was that?" "Nothing. Go on." Julian leaned forward, his Rolex flashing in the chandelier light. "Sarah, I know you're skeptical. You've always been the cautious one. But this time is different. I've got real connections, inside information. This is the opportunity that's going to make us all rich." We were already rich. Or at least I was. What my family didn't know, what I'd carefully hidden for the past 3 years, was that while I'd been financing Julian's fantasies, I'd also been quietly building something real. I started consulting on the side, small tech contracts at first, then larger ones. I invested early in a startup that went public. I developed proprietary software and licensed it globally. I made smart, strategic investments in emerging markets. My current net worth, $47 million. My family thought I made maybe $150,000 a year, that I was draining my modest savings to support my brother's dreams. They thought I was the sensible, boring one with a normal life. They had no idea. "So," Julian pressed, "are you in?" "I'll think about it," I said. Dad's expression darkened. "Think about it?" "Sarah, this is your brother. Family doesn't think about it. Family acts." I said I'll think about it. "You always do this," Julian snapped. "You make me beg. You hold money over my head like it's some kind of power trip. I'm trying to build an empire here, and you're nickeling and diming me." Nickeling and diming. From the man I'd given over $8 million. Mom reached across the table, her manicured hand soft and pleading. "Sarah, honey, please. Julian really needs this. His last venture didn't work out, and he's been so depressed. This could turn everything around for him. His last venture, the one that had swallowed $2.1 million of mine 18 months ago. The luxury car rental company. The one that collapsed after Julian burned through the investment money on a penthouse and a Lamborghini, was the unspoken elephant in the room. I'll give you an answer by dessert, I said lightly. Dessert? Julian scoffed, incredulous. Sarah, I need to know now. Then the answer is no. The table fell silent. No. Dad's voice dropped, dangerously quiet. You're refusing to help your brother? I'm declining to invest in another one of Julian's ventures. This time is different, Dad insisted. It's always different, I said evenly. And it always ends the same way. Julian's chair screeched back as he stood, face flushed with anger. You know what? Forget it. Keep your money. I'll find other investors, people who actually believe in me. Good, I said calmly. Do that. Mom gasped. Sarah, how can you be so cruel? Without a word, I pulled out my phone. Let me show you something. The restaurant lights dimmed slightly as I cast my screen onto the private room's TV. A setup I'd arranged with the manager earlier. A spreadsheet filled the screen. Column after column of dates, amounts, and purposes. This, I said evenly, is every dollar I've given Julian over the past 7 years. I pointed to the bottom line. $8,435,000. Promised returns, 0. Actual repayments, 0. Those were investments, Julian said quickly. Not loans. Really? I tilted my head. Because I have emails from Dad calling them temporary loans. Texts from Mom promising I'd be paid back with interest. And voice messages from you, Julian, swearing on your life that this time would be different. I switched to the next slide. Here's where the money actually went. Item by item appeared on screen. Lamborghini, $340,000. Penthouse down payment, $2.1 million. Yacht, $1.8 million. Watches, designer clothes, and vacations to Monaco and Dubai, $600,000. Actual business expenses, around $400,000. Less than 5%, I said coldly. Uncle Richard's mouth hung open. Aunt Patricia just stared at the screen in disbelief. Sarah, how did you even? Dad sputtered. I hired forensic accountants, I said simply. I tracked every dollar, every lie. A new slide appeared. 7 company names, all marked failed. Julian's real business record, 7 ventures, 7 failures, $8.4 million lost, 0 returns. They failed because of market conditions. Julian shouted. No, I replied calmly. They failed because you used every venture as your personal ATM, because you hired friends instead of professionals, and because you cared more about yachts than business plans. I switched to another file. And here's the most interesting part. The heading read, Bankruptcy Filing, Chapter 7, 6 months ago. Julian claimed he had no assets, I said. But that's strange, because I have photos of him in St. Bart's 3 weeks ago. On a yacht. Not a rental, one he owns. Registered under a shell company in the Cayman Islands. Julian's face drained of color. You can't. I can. And I did. I've spent the last 3 years documenting everything. Every hidden asset. Every falsified statement. Every fraudulent transfer. Dad's voice trembled. Sarah, what are you saying? I'm saying Julian has been committing federal crimes. Wire fraud. Bankruptcy fraud. Concealment of assets. Money laundering. Mom's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the floor. You're accusing your own brother, she whispered. I'm not accusing, I said quietly. I'm presenting facts. I looked directly at Julian. Facts I've already shared with the FBI. Just then, the door to the private dining room opened. 2 men in dark suits and a woman carrying a leather case stepped in, followed by the nervous restaurant manager. Julian Patterson, one of the men said, flashing a badge. Special Agent David Morrison, FBI. This is Agent Chin and Financial Crimes Prosecutor Janet Williams. We have a warrant for your arrest. Julian made a move for the door, but Uncle Richard, seated between him and the exit, didn't budge. Julian froze, then slowly sank back into his chair. Agent Morrison stepped forward. Julian Patterson, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, bankruptcy fraud, and international financial crimes. The only sound left in the room was the hum of the chandelier above us and my mother's quiet, broken sobs. You have the right to remain silent. The Miranda warning cut through the dining room like a blade. My family sat frozen in disbelief. Mom's hand shook as she covered her mouth. tears already streaming down her face. Dad just stared at me, cold, hollow, like he was seeing a stranger. Sarah, he whispered, what have you done? I protected myself, I said quietly. Agent Chin stepped forward. Miss Patterson, we'll need you at the field office tomorrow morning to sign your formal statement. I'll be there at 9. Across the table, Prosecutor Janet Williams addressed the room, her voice firm but calm. For everyone else, we'll be investigating your level of knowledge regarding Mr. Patterson's activities. If you receive funds or gifts derived from Miss Patterson's investments, we'll need documentation. Aunt Patricia glanced down at her Cartier watch, the one Julian had given her last Christmas. Oh God. Anyone who cooperates fully, Janet continued, will be treated more favorably. Anyone who obstructs will face their own charges. 2 agents led Julian out in handcuffs. He didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just walked between them like a man in a dream. The room was silent, except for Mom's soft sobbing. Dad finally spoke, voice trembling with fury. How could you? He's your brother. He's a criminal, I said. And you all helped him. For 7 years, you used me, manipulated me, guilt me, and drained millions from me to fuel Julian's lifestyle. Not his business. His lifestyle. He needed our support, Dad snapped. He needed accountability, I shot back. He needed consequences. Reality. I stood, grabbed my bag, and looked around the table. But you gave him money, my money, and called him brilliant while he burned through it. Mom wiped her tears. Where are we supposed to get the legal fees? Julian's going to need lawyers. Good ones. I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You're asking me to pay for his defense? Really? Sarah, Mom pleaded. He's your brother. Mom, I said softly. I'm the victim. I'm the one who filed the complaint. I'm the one testifying against him. Dad stood, face flushed red. You ungrateful. We gave you everything. We raised you. You raised me to be useful, I interrupted. The responsible one. The reliable one. The one who always said yes. Well, I'm done saying yes. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Dad, about that house in the Hamptons. His face went pale. The one Julian supposedly bought last year. For $0.5 million, right? I have the wire records. My money bought that house. It's under a shell company, but it's traceable. Sarah, please. The FBI is seizing it tomorrow, I said coldly. Along with the yacht, the cars, the watches, every luxury Julian bought with money he stole from me. Mom's voice cracked. But where will we go? We've been living there. I sighed. I don't know, Mom. Maybe get jobs. Jobs, she repeated, stunned. Sarah, I'm 63. Then downsize. Rent an apartment. Live within your means. You know, all the advice you gave me while I was funding your mansion. Uncle Richard cleared his throat. Sarah, some of us truly didn't know. If you got any gifts from Julian in the last 7 years, I said evenly, report them. Cooperate. Maybe you'll avoid charges. Then I left. Outside L, Bernardine. The night air hit my face like a reset. My phone started ringing before I reached the corner. I ignored it. The next morning, I sat across from Janet Williams at the FBI field office, reviewing documents. This is one of the most thoroughly documented fraud cases I've seen, she said, flipping through a binder. Bank records, shell company charts, emails, texts, everything. How long did this take you? 3 years of active investigation, I said. But I started keeping records 7 years ago. After the first loan. Something fell off even then. She nodded. Your family claims they didn't know the extent. They knew, I said quietly. They saw the lifestyle. They lived in the house I bought. They all knew he was broke, completely bankrupt. But the money kept flowing, and no one cared to ask from where. As long as the party stayed lavish and the champagne cold, they were happy to look away. We'll build the case, Janet said, sliding a file toward me. How about you? You holding up okay? I thought for a moment. I'm fine, I said softly. Better than fine. For the first time in 7 years, I feel free. My phone buzzed. A message from Dad. Please call. We need to talk. Julian made mistakes, but he doesn't deserve prison. I stared at the text, then deleted it. Another message appeared, Mom. How can you do this to your own family? What kind of person have you become? I typed back, the kind who refuses to be a victim anymore. Then I blocked her number. Janet flipped through another folder. Your records show substantial assets, Switzerland, Singapore, Cayman Islands. You've been planning this for a while. I've been protecting myself, I replied. Every dollar Julian took, I earned back, double. I built legitimate wealth through legitimate work. And I made sure it's untouchable. She raised an eyebrow. Smart. But his lawyers will argue those were gifts, not loans. They'll claim you can't call it fraud if you gave willingly. I have contracts for 60% of the transfers, I said calmly. And for the rest? Emails, messages, proof that he promised repayment while hiding assets. That's not a gift. That's fraud. Janet leaned back. The bankruptcy fraud alone will get him 5 to 7 years. Add the wire fraud and laundering. He's looking at 15 to 20. Good, I said simply. She studied me. Most victims struggle with turning in family. Most victims didn't spend 7 years being lied to, gaslit, and used, I said. Most didn't watch their family worship the thief while treating the victim like an ATM. She nodded slowly. Fair point. The trial dragged on for 8 months. Julian's attorneys threw everything they could: family dysfunction defenses, emotional manipulation, even personal attacks. None of it worked. The jury took just 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 18 years. 6 months later, my parents filed for bankruptcy. The Hampton house was seized and sold. Proceeds went toward my restitution. I was awarded $8.4 million plus interest and fees. Total, $11.7 million. I knew I'd never see most of it. Julian had burned through nearly everything. But the judgment itself meant something. It was proof that I wasn't crazy, or cruel, or wrong. It meant I was a victim who finally fought back and won. 2 years later, I sat in my office, now running a real estate company that built affordable housing in developing markets. Profitable, ethical, everything Julian's ventures weren't. My assistant buzzed in. Miss Patterson, there's someone here. Says he's your Uncle Richard. No appointment. I hesitated. Send him in. Richard looked older, worn down, remorseful. He sat across from me, folding his trembling hands. I came to apologize, he said quietly. I should have seen what was happening. Should have protected you instead of celebrating him. Why didn't you? I asked. Because it was easier not to, he admitted. Because your father was proud of Julian, and questioning him meant questioning everything. Because I was a coward. I nodded. Honesty was rare in my family. I gave everything back, he continued. The watch Julian gifted me, the golf membership, everything. I turned it over to the FBI. Cooperated completely. Janet Williams said I probably saved myself from prosecution. He smiled faintly. Probably. He looked down. I just wanted you to know you were right. You were brave. I'm sorry I didn't stand with you. Thank you, I said softly. Are you okay? He asked. I smiled. Better than okay. I'm free. He nodded and stood. At the door, he paused. Your parents ask about you. They don't understand why you won't see them. Do you understand? I asked. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, I do. After he left, I pulled up my portfolio. The $47 million I'd built had grown to $83 million. Smart investments, solid projects, no one draining me dry. My phone buzzed again, a news alert. Former tech entrepreneur Julian Patterson begins 18-year prison sentence for fraud scheme. I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just nothing. He made his choices, and I made mine. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself. Not funding someone else's dream. Not being the family's ATM. Not setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. Just living. Building. Growing. Free. Miss Patterson. My assistant's voice came through the intercom again. Your 2 o'clock is here. The Singapore investors. Perfect, I said. Send them in. I closed the news tab and opened my presentation. Julian's story had ended. Mine was only beginning. And this time, I was the one writing the ending.